I'm Nick LaFleur, and you're listening to Age of Agility, the podcast that talks to IT and business leaders to learn how they're solving unique challenges with better processes and adaptable technology. This week, we're joined by Nate Greenberg, Director of IT for Mono County and the town of Mammoth Lakes, California. We talk with Nate quite a bit about his team's response to the ongoing pandemic situation. However, I particularly enjoyed listening to his plans for the next phase of Mono County's digital transformation. These efforts will be focused around better leveraging the data the county already has to proactively serve their population. Take a listen and enjoy our conversation with Nate Greenberg.
Welcome to the Age of Agility. This is a show where we talk to people who are facing unique challenges with an agility mindset. We'll learn from industry leaders, business and IT professionals, and even check in on our colleagues from time to time. Stay tuned as we explore the age of agility. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Age of Agility podcast. My name is Shannon Curran, and I am your host. I'm very, very excited today to be talking to Nate Greenberg, who is the Director of Information Technology for Mono County and the town of Mammoth Lakes, California. Thanks so much for joining us today, Nate.
Thanks very much for having me. It's nice to be here.
Awesome. So can you tell our listeners, viewers, a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So as you said, I'm the Director of IT here at Mono County in the town of Mammoth Lakes. For those of you who aren't familiar with who we are or where we are, we're a small frontier county located on the eastern part of California, kind of smashed right up against the Nevada border. We border the eastern edge of Yosemite National Park and are considered a frontier county. We're quite rural, about 3,200 square miles, largely a tourism and recreation-based economy. And I really use my job as an excuse to live in the mountains and have an opportunity to be outside and play as much as possible. But in that role that I've been in for almost 10 years now, I manage kind of all aspects of technology across both organizations. And that includes sort of everything from email to 911. We do a tremendous amount of work around communications and emergency response related work, but a lot of traditional IT work as well, supporting about 450 individuals and 500 plus endpoints across about 30 different facilities. So I've been with the county about 20 years with a background in geographic information systems and started here in 1999-2000 building the county's first GIS. And been in the director role for about the last 10 years.
Awesome. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone that has your job. So this is very exciting. So if you could tell our listeners, so you're here today because you all have built a lot of agility into the way that you use technology to really support your communities, right? So would love to hear a little bit about some of the outcomes that you use to define success in your role specifically and maybe the work that you own.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that the simplest response to that is how satisfied are our customers and how successful are they in achieving their jobs? As a county government and a city government, we are effectively extensions of the state. And so at a county level, that means we're providing everything from health and human services, be that, public health, mental behavioral health, social services, all the way across the gamut to law enforcement, public safety, and kind of everything in between. And so we have a variety of different users within our organization, and each of them performs a really important job from the end customer or the constituent standpoint who we serve. And that extends actually beyond our walls to those constituents and ultimately our customers, whether they're people that live here full time or are visiting here, in terms of their ability to access government services, whether they realize they're accessing government services or not. And so my team has spent a lot of time over the last 5+ years really trying to better understand our immediate customers' needs. Those are the staff within the county and town that we directly serve, and help them better define what their needs are in terms of their day-to-day and ultimately how technology supports that. And then as an extension, trying to better understand as a community, as a region, what it is that we want to be and how technology fits into that. And so there are a lot of externally facing technology-driven or technology-supported initiatives and efforts, ranging from broadband, which is obviously a hot topic across the country and the world right now, to public safety, messaging, engagement, interaction, around COVID. Certainly was the hot topic for the last 18 months, a lot of wildfire and emergency response notifications and the like. And so the bottom line is, are we actually getting the right tools in front of our users and the right messages out to the public that we're serving? And are they able to find what they need and ultimately do what they're trying to do?
Small job, very small.
Small job. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's as much about evangelizing for technology and advocating for smart process and good decision making as it is about actually finding the actual technology to fit in the sort of realm of the conversation that's appropriate.
Interesting. Yeah. So can you explain to our listeners, viewers, I keep saying that, I'm not sure if people are watching or listening, a little bit about the way that your team is structured and sort of what their day-to-days look like?
Yeah, so we're a really small team. I mean, in terms of kind of the overall picture of the country, I mean, my team itself is 12 people. We basically are divided into 3 divisions, essentially. The first being infrastructure and kind of the more fundamental aspects of IT when people think about it. So servers and storage, networking, communications, kind of all the black box, behind the door stuff that nobody ever sees that kind of help keep everything running. A second team that's dedicated to customer service and support and really business process, business systems. And that's basically the team that when people think about, the IT crowd or when you talk about somebody in IT calling support and, checking to see if the computer's working, they're traditionally dealing with a lot of that reactive kind of frontline work, but increasingly focused more on proactive customer success, business process automation, process improvement, and the application of technology within that. And then the third is GIS and applications, and they are focused kind of at leveraging both of those other teams, as well as a lot of the software and technology that runs on top of those systems to provide tools to users, both internal and external, that provide a variety of different levels of functionality across the organization.
So that small team has been recognized now multiple times nationally for the work that you all have been doing on your digital transformation. So I'd love to hear a little more about that recognition and why you think that you're continuing to be recognized as a leader for the work that you're doing with technology in your office.
We're really proud. My team is very humble and could probably care less, but I think deep down everybody is really proud to be recognized now for the second year in a row as one of the top counties in the country in a population of under 150,000 or less. And last year we were ranked #1 in the country, largely as a result of our reaction, quick reaction really to COVID and basically transforming, 450 person organization and workforce to an entirely remote or a largely remote, partially hybrid workforce, and addressing a lot of the other fundamental pieces that were challenging organizations like ours throughout the country, including broadband and basic access to government resources and the things that were all very, very real problems, for us in the first 6 to 12 months of the pandemic. And then this last year, we were recognized again, mostly for the continued work that we were doing through COVID, but then also specifically for a lot of the work that we've been doing in leveraging LowCode and really trying to find new and creative ways to solve kind of long-running challenges that have existed in our organizations, I think, not just ours, that are not traditionally solved by kind of larger enterprise systems, or are often complex and expensive to solve when solved by these enterprise systems. And some of that was work that we did immediately during COVID. Some of that's work that we've been doing over the last several months, kind of as a learning process through COVID. And certainly we have a lot of things on the horizon that we're looking at and thinking about. But the recognition for us is, or for me at least, is just it's an indicator that we are, I guess, headed in the right direction, and that we're not necessarily, for me, about being the best or even being recognized, but just having a barometer for, what is the industry doing? What are some of the standards and practices that are emerging as best ones? And, what are we doing in terms of either driving those things or, lagging behind them? Because ultimately, as we said a minute ago, I think that customer success, customer satisfaction is really based off of the appropriate use of technology as a whole.
It's awesome. Love to hear it. And I know that, I'm sure as someone that's been at this organization for a long time, you must be very proud, because that's definitely something that takes a long time to build. So I hope that your humble team is very excited about it.
They're marginally excited about it.
As excited as an IT department gets, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well put.
You referenced this a little bit in your last answer about sort of the challenges that face government agencies when it comes to executing on digital transformation strategies. So I know that, we talk to folks from all different industries, some of which are working at, SaaS companies that are, digital everything, and some that are either in the nonprofit sector or government sector where technology is not necessarily always thought of as the first answer to a problem. So would love to hear a little more about, like, even we're not post-COVID, but even after the disruption of COVID or before, what are sort of the things that governments are really up against when they try and execute on their digital transformation strategies?
So I think, one of the major challenges that's facing government as a whole today, and probably has for a while, but it's really just kind of been put more under the microscope than ever, is that we really need to be all things to all people, kind of at all times. And, I think that we do see a trend in government. It's been happening for a while, but I think it's growing around there being sort of the ability to serve whoever our clients are, where they're at, and not really expect them to understand how government operates or how to actually find the services that they need, or really even understand a lot of the intricacies of the things that are sort of behind the scenes driving policies and decision making. And you see that with some of these big initiatives at the federal level all the way down to the local level, whether that's kind of the no wrong door mentality or whole person care or whatever it might be. And that extends into things that we don't always have control or purview over, like telecommunications and broadband. And so we are being, as organizations, dragged into new ways of really ensuring good and effective customer service, and really trying to put, solutions or systems in front of our constituents that really help meet their needs, all the while around managing transparency and really trying to hold ourselves to high levels of accountability, and people being very concerned about effective and efficient government spending. And so being able to monitor how we are doing as organizations and put key metrics and performance indicators in front of elected officials and decision makers and the public, so that they can understand what it is that we're doing. And I think that, as I said, the pandemic put a lot of that stuff kind of under the microscope, and it, I think, has forced us to up our game in many respects in terms of streamlining the way that we do things and kind of knocking down barriers to allow people more efficient or easier access to the services that we provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned earlier a little bit on this, but I love to touch on it a little bit more about what are the key problems that you are solving with technology now, right? So it probably was a little bit, actually, it might be interesting to talk about when you took this role 10 years ago, what were the problems that you were solving? And now how has that really evolved into the digital transformation strategy you have today?
Yeah, that's a great way to ask the question, I think, too, because you're right, it has changed a lot. And so, one of the ways that I guess I like to talk about this is that when I first stepped into my role, we didn't have a strategic plan. I actually, with my team, wrote the organization's first IT strategic plan. And that first plan was a 3-year plan that was really focused on infrastructure stability and I guess also governance and kind of operational stability. And so we invested a lot of energy into kind of the hardcore aspects of IT, the server storage network, making sure that we had the tools and resources to help our staff do their jobs. But most of it was internally focused. It wasn't necessarily customer focused. And a lot of that was driven by security needs and various things like that, replacing old equipment, like kind of the standard set of challenges you hear from mid to large organizations throughout the world. And the last 3 years or 4 years really have been focused around really putting systems in place that are allowing people to more easily do their jobs and basically implementing, I guess I'll say, more modern technology, things like Office 365 or, virtual meeting opportunities, be that Zoom or Teams, or the ability to sort of work completely remotely without anybody ever knowing that you're working remotely. Just a lot of those key pieces that I think now, 18 months into the pandemic, we've taken for granted and or expected. We spent a couple years leading up to the pandemic implementing them, and very thankfully so. I mean, there were certain things that we were doing as the pandemic kind of bared down on us that were not quite complete, but we were generally well positioned to transition a largely in-person workforce to a almost entirely remote workforce. We were starting to look at business process improvement and business operations as a whole, and applying technology effectively to sort of help kind of move the needle on those things. But it was sort of the lower of the priorities in that. And really, we're just embarking on our new 3-year strategic plan right now. And I think the one word that best describes what we're really focused on is leveraging. I think we spent a lot of time getting solid foundations built that we can now use in scale to help better meet the demands of our staff and apply technology more effectively. And I think often we, as technology providers, are good at sort of dropping a bunch of tinker toys on the table and expecting our users to be able to put those things together and find effective solutions, but we're not necessarily always helping them assemble things that are going to really do what they need. And that's kind of where we're at now. And I think COVID really, it shone a light on a lot of that. And I think, early on in COVID, we had a variety of people that were working on spreadsheets and Word documents to manage really important pieces of information, and all kinds of problems were obviously coming from those efforts. And in the course of days and weeks, built essentially purpose-built systems to help them more effectively sort of manage their operations in the day-to-day. And that's really, I think, what we're aimed at over the next several years, is leveraging those lessons learned and really kind of pushing them out to the masses in either an enterprise kind of level type of application or approach, or a purpose-built business-oriented system approach.
That really segues us really nice into how you all have been recognized for your utilization of low-code, right? So we obviously know you as a QuickBase customer, but we know that you've been utilizing sort of a mix of these purpose-built applications as well as sort of more enterprise level solutions. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how low-code has been, or no-code has been baked into your strategy as you continue to build your digital transformation.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just start with a tiny bit of history, which is, I came to QuickBase, I don't know, a little over 5 years ago. At the time, I was looking for a project management solution for the team. And, we're unique, as I've already described. We're small, yet we have to do all the same things as a larger organization. We have the same expectations or more put on us as others do. And I looked at probably 30 different project management solutions out there, and in the process came across QuickBase, scaffolded out a few applications for our internal use in IT in the department. And over the course of a few years, those grew, and people began to use them more, but there wasn't a lot of adoption, I guess, or full belief in them. And then about 3 years ago now, we basically committed and built our entire work management system for IT in QuickBase. So that is everything from our ticket and request system for people asking for service to our project management system, all of our license management, budgeting, strategic initiative tracking, time management, time tracking, and reporting. Everything is done in one application in QuickBase, and it's all interconnected. And it's improved the efficiency of the team dramatically and improved the visibility into our operations dramatically. And so my team had, became believers, I guess, over the last couple of years in QuickBase. And so when the pandemic really kind of bear down on us, we were, kind of reacting to and responding to individuals in public health that were working again on like Word documents and Excel spreadsheets, and essentially said, the best thing that we could possibly do would be to slap together an application to help manage your response efforts around COVID. And so literally in a matter of 3 or 4 days, we were working in like multi-hour sprint cycles with like 1.5 people, just developing new bits of functionality and putting it out to a team of about 20 people who were kind of working on the front lines, getting feedback from them, taking that back, iterating and pushing something out. We weren't even in a testing environment. We were just literally pushing stuff directly into production and then fixing issues as we went, and these really rapid development cycles. And by basically the end of a week, we had probably 80% of the application that we're using now built. And over the course of the following, 3, 4, 5 months, kind of sketched out more or less the rest of that application. Largely the application that's being used today resembles what was being used in month 2, with small tweaks along the way. There's been about 150 people that have cycled through that application over the period of time. And the application really initially was built to support the nurses and the folks that were working on the front lines, taking calls from 211 and trying to mitigate hospital surge, getting people to testing, dealing with contact tracing, and then that evolved into helping our EOC manage assets and inventory, whether that was PPE or meals that were needing to get distributed to folks in the field and the like, and then eventually vaccine distribution and management of that. And so we were building the apps and getting them into production, well ahead of resources that were coming from the state. And actually, in the case of the contact tracing, we decided not to go to the state's application because the purpose-built in-house one was sort of so much better. So it was a really eye-opening experience, I think, for not just my team, because we were building something in an environment where kind of you could take anybody who had some basic knowledge of database and user experience and maybe GIS and plug them in and kind of teach them a little bit about the nuts and bolts of QuickBase, and then they could provide support at a mid-level. And then also folks on the customer end, we literally wrote 0 documentation. Like our whole philosophy was that if you can't figure it out, by button clicks, then like we didn't design it right because we just didn't have time to write documentation. And so we were just doing really, really basic levels of training and then reacting to what was happening as people were doing things like, okay, we should fix that or make this process work differently. And so after probably 6 or 7 months of that application being in use, we had a lot of people plugged into it that were working in other areas of the business that weren't traditionally on the front lines of a public health crisis. That were like, hey, could we use this for inspection tracking? Or we have, multi-million-dollar disbursements coming from the CARES Act, and we're going to set up a grant program for small businesses that are suffering. Can we build an application to accept, applications from businesses, review and dole that stuff out? And, the answers were just always yes. And so we've basically been starting to pivot more toward that. And I think the biggest challenge that we have now is kind of mitigating the request for work. We could probably implement or employ 4 or 5 full-time developers, just focused on QuickBase. And a lot of the work that we're doing in QuickBase that sort of is being done by multiple other folks on my team that wouldn't traditionally fall into that kind of development hat. So it's been a really interesting experience. And I think, as you said, the pandemic's not over. We're still adjusting to and reacting to. But I think that as we started to kind of come out of the end, it's more about, okay, well, now what? Where do we go? And how do we leverage what we learned?
It's incredible. Yeah, I think you all are a really incredible story of building upon your initial success and really getting folks into the platform, building that don't consider themselves developers, who we'd call maybe a citizen developer or citizen automator or business technologist. But I think that your story is really exactly what our platform's made to do. So it's really exciting to see not just the utilization of the platform, but the impact that it can have on the community, right? So talk about the amount of chaos there was when it came to finding testing sites or understanding vaccine distribution, or maybe once again having to understand an additional level of vaccine distribution, right? So it seemingly your work is paying dividends, the first application that you built, which is awesome.
In some ways, it kind of gives us goosebumps when we think about and see that it did have that large of an impact. And what we've also said is that we've collected a dramatic amount of data about our community and the people that we serve. And clearly we have no intention to use that for anything other than to continue to serve them effectively. But now it's like, well, we're poised with this very unique set of opportunities around how do we continue to sort of build off of that, the information itself or the expectations that have been established within our staff in serving that population, or the expectations of the community and sort of their interface, because a lot of the data around our response to the pandemic, whether that was case rates or vaccine distribution or whatever it might be, a lot of that stuff was getting aggregated and pushed back out to the community for a real-time picture. And so I think that those demands are now just sort of ingrained in us in a way that we're like, okay, so let's use this as a starting point, stakes in the ground, and where do we want to go from here?
Yeah, so that leads me into my question about what are you most excited about in your long-term plan? What is sort of the stuff that you're really excited to implement in the next round of your strategic plan?
Fundamentally, I think that we have acknowledged that QuickBase as an enterprise platform, we basically are in IT seeing there being kind of 4 predominant enterprise platforms that we work with. Office 365, the Microsoft environment as a whole, GIS, and we're a partner with ESRI, Laserfish around document management, and QuickBase. And the overlap of those, it really changes, I guess, based on the question being asked or the application that we're sort of talking about. But things that were more traditionally, done in SharePoint are now being kind of moved over to more of a QuickBase philosophy, or things that were maybe more traditionally done in GIS are being looked at with a QuickBase front end and a GIS back end. And so what I'm really excited about and what the team's starting to work on with kind of the 50,000 foot view is like, what is the relationship between these kind of four, I'll say, modern enterprise platforms, and how do those four as like new paradigms relate to our more traditional enterprise systems? We obviously continue to use purpose-built commercial off-the-shelf platforms for our financial system and for our tax system, but there's gaps in all of those things. We're generally not able to buy the multi-million-dollar systems because of our size, and so we end up dealing with I don't want to say lower quality, but systems that don't always meet our needs, and there's gaps that end up as a result of those systems. And so what we're starting to look at is how do we leverage those underlying systems with kind of these four new modern enterprise systems and paradigms to create a fabric or an ecosystem of apps that live on top of those things that really meet customer needs and start to fill those voids or connect things together. And what I'm sort of seeing is that our ERP of the future may not be necessarily a purpose-built off-the-shelf one, but it will likely be I don't want to say cobbled together, but a custom-built suite of applications that straddles those lines and pulls the representative data from those other systems and puts it into an environment or a system that is more effective for somebody to be able to use. There's a ton of examples of that, but just one that we have been kind of sketching out recently is kind of related to COVID, but it's with our critical care customers, folks that are oxygen dependent or transportation dependent, and ultimately need the support of a health and human service agency if especially there was a disaster, or we've got in California these things called public safety power shutoffs, which is basically in high fire risk areas, utilities de-energizing circuits in areas where there is risk for wildfire due to inclement weather, which we have a lot of here in the mountains. And so, there's a lot of obvious challenges that come from when somebody who needs an oxygen concentrator for breathing has their power shut off. And we need to be able to quickly know who those individuals are, where they live, whether they need support or not. And because we've done work to put the way that we manage various pieces of that puzzle specifically into different QuickBase apps, we can now chain them together and create notifications and triggers to say, when the power gets shut off to community X, these individuals are going to be affected, and we need to basically send resources to support them. These facilities that the county operates are going to be affected. These ones have generators and could be used for shelter or whatever it might be, but we need to leverage resources in support of those. And all of that information is basically very quickly integrated. So that's one of probably a dozen other examples that are like that. And I think that the next couple of years are going to be rife with opportunity to start to explore and really put effort toward implementing that kind of work.
Very cool. All right, we're going to ask you the question we ask all of our guests. How would you define agility?
Well, I think the bottom line is understanding what somebody is asking, regardless of whether they're really asking it in the way that they think they're asking it or not, and then being able to react to that quickly and effectively, essentially to be able to put a solution in place that meets their needs where they're at, or maybe exceeds their needs where they're at in a timely manner. And I think as we learned through COVID, it's have that expectation changed on you as you're implemented or as you're implementing that, and be able to effectively do the same thing again and again and again in very short order.
That's a great answer. That's different. We haven't heard that one yet, so I love that. So, and our final question for you is, how are you doing? How is your life personally, professionally? Is there anything you've been watching lately, books you've been reading, work that you're doing that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I'm realizing that I'm pretty burned out, that I was feeling pretty good through most of the pandemic, but I think as things have tapered a little bit, it's like, whew, it was a lot. And so just kind of trying to regain some momentum and get ready for the next several years and all the things that we've talked about. It's a little bit interesting, as the majority of California seems to be on fire. We're impacted by smoke, and that's obviously affecting our community here. We're not immediately impacted by fire, but certainly by smoke, and certainly have a lot of colleagues and friends throughout the state that are being directly impacted by fire. And so it's a scary thing. And I think it puts a lot of extra demands on us as organizations. And so, I've been, trying to spend as much time outside as possible, and, getting away from work and finding the balance. And I'm a big backcountry skier in the winter, and climber and runner. And so trying to, just re-energize myself with those things. Unfortunately, I'm not the best reader. I feel like by the end of the day, I'm usually so fried from looking at a screen and working that I'm not very up on literature at this point in life. But thanks for asking.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I am a very conditional reader, so I understand. Well, Nate, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, sending you lots of health and safety to your community as well as the others around you, and just totally in awe with the work that you guys do over there, and just really grateful that you were able to come here and tell your story.
Thanks so much for having me, and really appreciate the support from you all as a company, and I think it's great to have that partnership. So thanks.
So to all our viewers, watchers, listeners out there, make sure to subscribe. You can find us anywhere you're listening to your favorite podcasts, as well as YouTube and our website, which is quickbase.com/podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks. Bye.